Yeah, sweet. So, hi everybody. I am Garrett, founder of Rare Technologies, and we actually know Think through Root Network. So, my company was in the second Denari Labs token accelerator. I graduated from that, and we were on the Root Network track. So it was I think, Root Network, Flow, and then I actually forget the third cohort one. But anyways, we were part of the Root one. And graduated, and yeah, that's kind of how we got to know the Mike and the Think guys through that. Of course, I know Root is on a little bit of hard times right now, but yeah, anyway, that's kind of how we got to know you guys. And yeah, I was super pumped to show kind of what we've been working on. Some of this work did come out of the accelerator, but as you guys know, the speed of this kind of AI assisted engineering vibe coding stuff is super fast. So a lot of things we're doing are even kind of newer than that. We graduated earlier this year from that program. So. Well, sweet. Well, with that, if yeah, why don't I just jump in and then we can record it, and then also chop up the recording and stuff and send it out. But yeah, I'm super pumped to have everyone that joined here, because this is definitely the inaugural trial run of this thing. I've been putting it together for about 2.5 months now, and this is kind of the first time it's publicly viewable and accessible. So it's exciting. And yeah, thanks so much, Patrick, for organizing everything.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for being here.
Totally. So yeah, let me start kind of from absolute zero, and then we'll see if we can get a full end-to-end Dapp built at the end of this thing before the end of the hour. So it's kind of a audacious goal, but I think we could actually do it. So to start, I'll kind of just give a little brief explanation of what this devdapp.com is. So what you're looking at here is an end-to-end Dapp that was put together for $0, entirely for free. The only thing that was actually paid for was just a tiny bit of cursor API usage, and even that, if you don't even want to pay cursor, you could just use the auto model and feasibly get this whole thing to work, which is just fascinating. My background prior to this, we'd built all sorts of Dapp infrastructure, starting in 2020 timeframe. I raised some funding in 21, built out all of this Kubernetes stuff and MongoDB Cloud Atlas and all this stuff. Had a pretty big team, and it's kind of shocking to say in the last maybe 2.5 months of working, I think this is a equivalent scalable system to that, except instead of thousands of dollars a month in cloud bills and hiring a bunch of employees and stuff, now it costs $0 and also scales and is secure, which is really nuts. So it's a bit of background. If you guys are kind of familiar with the more Web 2 side of this kind of vibe coding phenomenon that's come out, there are a lot of people out there that have had quite a lot of success with using Vercel to do all of the, it's called continuous integration, continuous deployment, all the putting your code out on the internet part. So rather than just looking at it on localhost, you can look at it out on the live internet. And then the kind of back part of the stack is this thing called Supabase, which is kind of I think a better version of Firebase, but it's basically a completely abstracted backend. So what you're looking at here is our kind of custom tuned open source version of the Vercel Supabase primary template that has also been enhanced with the full Coinbase developer program API keys kind of shoved into it behind the scenes. And I think this stack, this Vercel Supabase plus abstracted Web3, it really is the future to make something that is literally $0 to try out. All of the services you can get pretty close to 5,000 monthly active users for free, which is totally nuts. So kind of zero barrier to entry, zero cost. And I think if as Web3 as a space, if we can apply the kind of latest and greatest ways that these Web 2 SaaS things are getting off the ground with Vercel and Supabase, and apply that same approach to Web3, then we'll have way more shots on goal, and ultimately have this amazing infrastructure of like immutable databases and such, actually being used by people and making cool production grade products. So I guess the first thing that I'll do, and then feel free to follow along as well. And I'll kind of couch this by saying let's just pretend that we're not developers, even if we are, because we really I've tried to engineer the system to not actually require any development itself, but take it to the point where you can kind of copy paste these pre-engineered prompts into Cursor and actually get at least the core basic guts of your Dapp built. Of course, then whatever your unique business logic is can kind of take over, and you can modify from there. But today it's basically, can we get a very basic Dapp out on the open internet that has a real database behind it that could make a Web3 call. So let me log out here. And yeah, if you guys go to devdapp.com, it's this Vercel hosted Supabase Coinbase website, and you can either do the email login, or I also got the GitHub login to work, which is quite cool too. So you could log in either with email, or if anybody's curious how I did it, you can set up a sort of OAuth stuff inside of GitHub and then allow your users to log in with GitHub as well. Another quite kind of cool, interesting thing that I did was build this whole kind of token gating functionality. Again, once you clone this repository, you'll also be able to do all this and have all the code to do it. So what I did kind of for fun is just, if you have 30,000 of these rare tokens, you'll be able to see this, what I call a super guide. So there's kind of like a basic copy paste guide and then a fancier guide. And anybody that logs in right now will have, basically have enough of these tokens to do that. And then you can kind of get access to the super guide here. So kind of everything else that we'll be doing today, if you guys want to, again, make an account real quick, log in. This guide here has all of the copy paste cursor commands that you will need to kind of do everything. So I guess as a caveat too, this isn't the one stack to rule them all. There's that's the beauty of computer science. There's a million ways to solve a problem. I just happen to think that this flow here is the current Q3 2025 easiest way to solve stuff. And I really like using Cursor, and I'll show some of the cool kind of functionalities here, but there's a new functionality in Cursor, this browser mode, that basically allows it to pretend to be, pretend to actually, click around in a live browser, make sure that everything is working, and do all the testing for you, which is really powerful. And I haven't seen that feature roll out in Claude Code or in Windsurf or whatnot quite yet. So that kind of tilts the deck, at least for me, towards Cursor. But whatever your favorite AI IDE is, feasibly would work the same way. If you like Klein or one of these other ones. So the very first step here is, and again, you might be super advanced developer and not need this, but this was for somebody who doesn't know anything about how to do any kind of vibe coding. This prompt here will actually install Git in your machine for you, and then make all these keys. Basically, there's once you have Git on your computer, you need to hook it up with this thing called GitHub. So Git controls all of the source code, and then GitHub, this thing that Microsoft owns, actually is like a thing out on the open internet that lets you download, the code. So the very first part of the guide is basically just getting Git installed on your computer. And I won't run this totally from scratch because my system's already set up. But yeah, this one prompt here in Cursor, will do that for you. Just as a real kind of quick aside too, on Cursor, you really just need a place locally somewhere on your computer to do this stuff. So you can open a new project and then make a new folder, and my cool project. And then eventually what we'll do is we'll actually download the template that I made and then put it in here, and then that way you can have Cursor actually update the code and then ultimately push it out onto the open internet. So yeah, so basically from like a totally empty window like this, if you're on the free one, it'll just say auto and it'll pick like a cheap model, which, works reasonably well. If you do spend any money though, I would say spending $20 a month on the Pro cursor is like definitely worth it. Again, because the Vercel, all the hosting is free, Supabase, all the backend is free, Coinbase developer program, all the like Sepolia testnet gas, which anyway, we'll get into some of that later, all free. So really the only thing that you would actually need to pay for is cursor. One thing too, I'll show real quick is kind of little tips and tricks on cursor itself. So you can see every time I prompt it, again, this is for the Pro one, it costs just a little bit of money. There's a brand new model that came out like 2 days ago that I've been using a bunch. It's like a model that is, 3 times cheaper, twice as fast, but like 85% as good as like the highest, fanciest end model out there. And it's been working pretty well for me. I typically either use this model or the Grok models that have come out, which, again, if you go into Cursor, you can pick all these different ones. The Grok model is also free right now in Cursor. It, I feel like, has a bit of an attitude and kind of cowboys things a little bit more than I would like. The Claude models seem to follow the rules a little bit better. But either of those, you can definitely stay under the like $20 a month cap picking either of those models. Anyways, once you pick one, then it's really just like taking these prompts and kind of copy pasting them out of the guide and into Cursor. And then the AI does literally everything for you. It's nuts. It has access to a thing called the terminal on your computer. So you don't actually do any of the setup or the initialization yourself. Cursor's actually doing it for you. And these prompts here, I've worked on quite a bit to kind of do the stuff for you and try to do the vast majority of the setup for you. So anyway, so yeah, step 1, install Git. Step 2 is the GitHub account. If people are not familiar with GitHub, it is the kind of Microsoft-owned universal place to store and download all of your code on the internet. And GitHub uses the Git that you just installed on your computer to do this. So, basically, once you create a GitHub account, then you can download and fork this repository here. And if anybody wants to do that right now, I will put it in the chat. Boom. Cool. So this open source repository here is my kind of flavor of the Vercel Supabase default template. So where the Vercel Supabase default template kind of just lets you build a Web 2 experience, this one has been extended to also allow you to do the Coinbase developer program stuff. And yeah, it's like kind of the culmination of like 2 or 3 months of work of me, beating my head into the computer 8 hours a day for, months to kind of get all the stuff working behind the scenes. So yeah, so yes, so with this GitHub repository here, you can fork it, which means you can make a copy of it, and then you can get it installed locally on your machine. And I can sort of show it, I guess, a little bit. You could either take the prompt right out of there, or again, in Cursor here, you can say, hey, please fork, please clone and download this thing into my Cursor project. Again, with the prerequisites that you have Git installed and GitHub installed. So we'll kind of skip ahead and then say that, hey, you've got this cool open source repository now forked. So the interesting thing is what you have 85% of what you need with the open source repository, but the things that you don't have are these API keys. So basically these credentials to actually have, instead of it being a default template, have it actually hooked up with real production credentials that can, log in real users and such. So we'll go back to the guide and we'll check that out next. So, oops, forget. Cool. So we've got Git, and we've got a GitHub account. And again, it's really easy to make a GitHub account. You can use OAuth. You can connect your Gmail or whatever. Make a GitHub account. And then this is the part here that actually allows the local Git on your computer to actually connect with GitHub. And it's a little tricky, but you can have cursor. You can just say, hey, cursor, give me the SSH key. And it will give you the SSH key. And this guide thing here will tell you to go here. And then you'll make a new SSH key in GitHub and you'll paste it in. And then at that point, you can do like a hello world type thing. You can say, hey, edit the README. README is like the kind of instruction file at the base of the repository. Edit this thing, update it, and then commit it, and then see if it actually happens. And then you've kind of proven the full flow that you can actually, use this thing called source control. You can download the fork, and then you can modify it a little bit. And then with this SSH key, cursor will then allow you to push the code back up to GitHub. There's two really, really important reasons why you want to do this. One, if your code is under source control, that means that when the AI does something stupid, which it inevitably will, you can do a thing called rolling it back. So you can see here that I've committed, at least this repository, like 230 something times, right? So every time I'm doing something, I'm constantly writing down what I'm doing. And that way, if the thing goes rogue, it can basically, it's called a rollback. You don't actually have to know how to, write all of the Git commands to do that. You can, again, use cursor or equivalent IDE, and then it'll roll those changes back for you. But the second most important reason why you need to use GitHub is once you use GitHub, you can completely automate your entire deployment process because you can connect your GitHub to this thing called Vercel, over here. So when I mentioned at the beginning, there's kind of these three critical pieces: the kind of front end deployment piece, the back end piece, and then the Web3 piece. And again, not to totally pump Vercel and leave. There's another one called Netlify. They're fine. People used to use this thing called Heroku back in the day. It's fine. A lot of people still deploy the code using their own custom scripts to their own virtual private servers, which I guess is also fine. But this does all of the heavy lifting for you and does all of the security stuff for you. And if you scale up and your idea is successful, then you've already built the infrastructure to just pay Vercel a de minimis amount of money, and then you can scale from the couple thousand users you get for free every month to like 1 million users. It's nuts. In fact, Vercel Supabase, I think, runs a pretty big chunk of Netflix infrastructure. So it really does scale. So anyway, so what I'm looking at here is me pushing new code to GitHub. And then the magic of Vercel is it's taking that code and it's automatically putting it out onto the open internet for me. But if for whatever reason it fails, like here, I tried to do something and it didn't build properly, it won't actually screw up your website. It'll just error out and then keep it back on the old version. So the way that you kind of set these two things up is you log into Vercel with your GitHub account. So it's really important that the GitHub account that you make is the single source of truth, because you'll be logging into both Vercel and Supabase with the same GitHub account. So once you do that, there'll be a little button that will say, hey, look at my repositories and deploy this new one. So if I actually have a couple of projects here, and I think you get 4 or 5 projects for free. In fact, here's the starter kit one that I deployed. So if you log into Vercel, with GitHub, it's going to say, what are your repositories that you've already, already added to your project, which is why the very important kind of prerequisite step is that you take this starter kit template here, and then you at least fork it. You at least fork it and clone it to your own repository. Because once it's in your own repository, then you can deploy it to Vercel. So anyway, so let's go back to the guide real quick and kind of see where exactly we are. Aha, fork. So go to GitHub. You can just click this button. You can fork it. The other quite important part, and again, you don't have to do this yourself. You can have the machine do it. So Vercel uses its own version of JavaScript called Next.js. It doesn't really matter. It's tuned and made to work well with Vercel. And the open source code that they give you is written in this Next.js. And because it's written in this version of JavaScript, you need to install this thing called Node. So that is the one other prerequisite on your machine. So in the grand scheme of installing a bunch of stuff on your computer, it's way less resource intensive than like a Docker and stuff like that. Almost any machine can run, pretty much any machine can have Node installed on it. So that's kind of the last like local prerequisite. Again, you've got Git that Cursor did for you. You have the Node installed. And then that SSH key helps like basically confirm that you can actually commit something to GitHub. And then when you have your Vercel account, then you can actually deploy stuff. So here's then this step will take the repository and then clone it so that you can see it locally. Locally on your machine. I typically just put stuff into the documents folder here, and I've got a bunch of different versions of that. And then basically the whole workflow is that you do stuff locally, you test it locally, you make sure that it works locally, and then you say, hey, commit to remote main for me. And then everything that you did locally just magically shows up on your on the open internet on your website because of Vercel. So clone and install. Here we go, deploy to Vercel. So you can sign up, authorize Vercel to access the repository, and then deploy it. Cool. So those steps there, I think effectively make like Squarespace and Wix and all of those sort of things just like totally redundant, irrelevant businesses in 2025, because you have the full power for like the AI to just make the prettiest website that you want and put it out onto the open internet for free. So why would you pay Squarespace $20 a month to do the same thing? You basically do it for free. But there's a big difference between just a static, pretty looking website and an actual fully functional end-to-end application. So this part here, this phase 3, is where things get quite interesting. And this is where, again, I'll just kind of share my screen and show kind of where all the correct setup is. But ultimately, with these kind of nice copy paste commands, the cursor will be able to do a lot of this for you. So don't be intimidated by Supabase, and Vercel. If you look at them, it looks a little intimidating. You're like, oh man, there's all this crap that's going on. But you really don't need to worry about like 90 to 95% of all of these buttons and all this crap that it does. You really just have to do this kind of like minimum viable path to actually get your system set up. So I'll explain a little bit about now how environment variables work and how Supabase works. And then we'll try to kind of hook these two together, and then I'll kind of show you how that works. So this is Supabase. So just like Vercel, $0 a month, they will basically give you an infinitely scalable thing called Postgres. Doesn't matter, it's like a fancy version of SQL that allows you to do all of the backend and all the databases and all that kind of stuff. And it's where you manage all of your users and all of your authentication, which is really nice. It does Prior to this, you had to kind of glue everything together separately. But now it is a combined, like, complete backend as a service. It does all your API stuff. It does all your authentication. It's nuts. It's really cool. So what we'll see here, and I'll just kind of show, just why not, just show some of what's going on. It shows all of the databases that you have, all these things called schemas, which is like where you're saving your user data, where you're saving like fields. So this is how you like build like a real legit SaaS product. You have users, you have fields. This is where you can do things like Stripe integration. It's basically your kind of like off-chain source of truth. So if I real quick go to authentication here, we'll see these are all the users that have signed up for the website, and Supabase is again keeping them all totally abstracted. Do they log in with GitHub? Did they log in with an email? When was the last time they logged in? Etc. In the default repository, I've also made one nice little piece of logic that you pretty much expect every kind of website that you log into to be able to upload a profile picture and store it and save it for you. So I've kind of had the AI engineer all of that and then compress the profile pictures really small. Supabase by default gives you, I think it's not much, it's like 100 megabytes or something of like free storage. But you'd be surprised how far 100 megabytes can go if you just compress the user images into like 10 kilobytes or whatever. So the default template that you downloaded has all of this logic already in it to do things like, say, the profile picture. Basically everything that you see when you're on the Dapps site is something that is in the template. So profile, edit profile, upload a profile picture, change the about me, etc. All of this stuff is now, when you update it, it's saving it into the live Supabase website. These tokens are also off-chain right now, so it's basically just updating a field in the database. I will show at the end kind of how you can turn tokens on-chain, but we'll just keep it simple. Keep it simple now. So the really important part of Supabase, and actually the really important part of just kind of developing in general, is that if you go to now back to Vercel. Okay, so imagine Vercel is like kind of the main source of truth that has to have all of your credentials in it correctly, and it needs credentials from Supabase and it needs credentials from Coinbase to work properly. So if you go to Vercel, and again, this stuff is kind of buried, but if you go to settings and you go to environment variables here, you will see that you can upload all of your environment variables, and that is how you effectively take a empty default project and actually make it work and store real credentials. So let me go over to this other, the main. So there's a private repository that has the main Dapps site in it, and then there's kind of a clone of it, the public repo. There's a lot of reasons to do that. If you let your environment variables get loose and they're open source, then people can hack into your system. It's like a pretty big security no-no. So this is the one part where you really want to be careful to kind of manage these things, because they're effectively the secrets that allow anybody with those secrets to either get into your backend, get into your database, etc. So you definitely want to be careful and not commit them in plain text to your open source repository, because then everybody will see your environment variables, and there's bots that scrape GitHub constantly that will just, again, if there's not real live production data in it, you're fine, it doesn't matter. But there's been so many horror stories of people vibe coding things and doing that, and then having their SaaS business get destroyed because they like leaked some keys. So anyways, so here's, I'll show you though. Now again, I'm not going to click the unhide, but I'll show you the actual like correctly configured how this works after you're sort of all done. So And again, you can have Cursor, do this all for you. So effectively, to take the default template that we provide, the open source template, and make it work properly, you just have to set all of these environment variables correctly. And you can either kind of manually copy paste them in, or there's a really nice thing that Vercel does where you can do this thing called import env. And then you just upload your environment variable file, and it will parse it, and it will save all of the stuff into Vercel for you. And that's kind of the actual hardest part of everything else is pretty easy. Even this isn't that difficult. It's not, again, actually coding. It's sort of manipulating these interfaces to get these previously existing production grade stuff kind of glued together in a way that would allow you to build a real application with real users that's really querying the blockchain, which I'll show at the end. So before I ramble too far, let me go back to the guide and see how we did here. Set up Supabase. One nuance, there is a button in Vercel that allows you to deploy Supabase inside of Vercel. And I wouldn't do that. I would get an independent Supabase account made that you log into with your GitHub. Again, same GitHub account as Vercel. A small nuance there, but Vercel has some kind of weird incestuous SaaS thing going on where I don't know if it's a crippled version, but it's just kind of weird when you use Vercel to install Supabase. I think the better way to do it is just get a regular Supabase account, and then all you need to do is tell Vercel the environment variables, and then it works better. And then you have your own independent Supabase. So, it also makes you slightly more resilient. Say for whatever reason you don't like Vercel, then you could switch to Netlify or something else, and you would have your own production database that's kind of segregated from that. So the most kind of interesting part of Supabase. So, again, if the goal is that, you just have a good idea, you have good business logic, you know how to get customers, etc., but you don't necessarily know how to code that well. How do you manipulate these systems in a way that you can basically copy paste your way into a functional Dapp? Well, on the Supabase side, you have to configure everything correctly. You have to have tables, right? Here's all the staking and unstaking transactions. Here's if you log in and you see, and you're staking and unstaking the rare tokens, and if you only have that many rare tokens, then you're able to access the super guide. But if you don't have that many tokens, you're not. If you want to do token gating, all that stuff needs to be configured in the database correctly, and you can see that it is. But how did I actually configure Supabase correctly to do this? Well, one of the other reasons why Supabase is so awesome is there's this thing called a SQL editor here, and what you do is you go over to Cursor, or you go to the it's in the open source repository here. There's a SQL. Basically a SQL file in docs. Anyway, it's in the guide. It'll link you to it. But you basically just copy paste the SQL command into Supabase, and then it will set up all of your fields for you, and feasibly we'll set it up in a way with row level security. And there is some nuance in this. The SQL scripts that I've provided in the default open source database are I think good. They've passed our internal audits and seem to be secure. Like with any open source software, buyer beware. This part here is the real guts of your system, and this is the part where if you don't do it correctly, then people will mess you up. The good people at Supabase make a extremely secure product, right? That if configured correctly, will allow you to run a 1 million user, Web 2 SaaS business or Web 3 business on but if you configure it wrong, then you're screwed. It's the one. This is definitely the one piece to be a bit careful. But again, if you're just looking to do a basic like, can I log users in with a social login? Can I make them a wallet behind the scenes? Can I upload a profile picture and then change it? All of those basics have been really trod through quite extensively. It's just in again, the nuances of your specific business that you want to do. Like you want to make like I don't know, some sort of like Web3 dog grooming app or something, then you would need to like have those fields in there for like, what kind of dog or whatever, or how many tokens does it cost to like have the dog washed? All that stuff, is custom and would need to basically go into Supabase through the SQL editor. Anyways, where are we? Okay, cool. So this is the fun part, the actual fun part here. So I've broken these things into 5 phases. Again, from absolute zero, the GitHub part, the Vercel part, Supabase part. The fun part though is the Coinbase developer program. So again, I'm sure there's a million other ways to do this. I think this is the kind of most Web 2 friendly, secure, abstracted way of making a functional dApp that could feasibly scale. Because the Coinbase developer platform allows you to export API keys that allow you to use Web3 in an identical way that you would use Supabase, which is really, really sweet. I know Solana and some other folks have made some kind of strides for this, but in my humble opinion, this is definitely the most sophisticated kind of out of the box Web3 setup for the basics, for getting testnet funds, for making users' wallets, for sending and receiving transactions, for querying existing audited smart contracts and not rolling your own. The Coinbase developer program does an amazing job at that. There's a caveat that, of course, they want you to use Base, which makes sense. While they say it supports any EVM, definitely with air quotes, it supports Base by far the best, which I think obviously is in their business best interest to do. I don't have any problem with it. So what you see kind of in the default template is a way to make, again, Vercel, Supabase, Coinbase CDP. Can you have a kind of out of the box, full stack Web3 application built? So let me actually, if you want to play with it, we can kind of actually let me go back to up, and then we'll go to the profile. And if you want to see this working down here, I built this thing called my wallet. When you first log in, you'll need to make a new wallet. When you make a new wallet, it's going to save that wallet address into Supabase. When you request testnet funds here, like that, which is so cool, automatically adds to the transaction history. You can go look on the Base Sepolia scan that it just happened 5 seconds ago or whatever. But the real beauty of this template that we put together is that all the Coinbase CDP stuff is inside of Supabase, which means that you have a complete like Web 2 like experience for your users. Like I clicked, request testnet funds. It didn't fire up MetaMask and have me sign something. I mean, and trust me, I'm like a kind of a self-custody, maxi a little bit in a way. But as far as making like end user accessible applications, like this is by far the simplest, easiest way to do it. So yeah, so it's quite incredible. And again, the default template that you deploy, the GitHub URL link that I sent in the chat, will have all of this functionality working totally out of the box. Make wallets, request testnet funds, send testnet funds. Of course, if you want to send mainnet funds instead of testnet funds, you'll need to configure a few environment variables differently. If you want to query some kind of like, I don't know, make ERC 721s or whatever, make some NFTs. Again, you can do that all through this kind of abstracted Coinbase system. It just requires, again, more configuration in the Supabase SQL editor, and then of course more configuration on the Coinbase side. But yeah, I think we're kind of rounding home base or getting close. And thank you for paying attention this whole time too, because I've been talking for a while. Okay. Yes. The testing. Let's just assume that all of that went great. And I know I'm going faster than actual clicking speed here. Just kind of giving you a rundown of it rather than doing like kind of click by click that you can follow along with. But again, hopefully the guide is clear enough that you can follow it. So yes, testing. That's the ultimate piece of this. So again, if we've got a Vercel deployed application. Actually, before I get into testing, I do want to mention the one other thing you could spend like 99 cents on that would like make your website way better. I use this thing called Namecheap. There's instructions in the guide as well. There's lots of places that you can buy domain names from. I just happen to like them because they're extremely cheap. So if you wanted like a 99-cent domain name, rather than going to some random Vercel URL here, I believe it's, so see here's environment variables in the Vercel settings. Here's the domain setting. Super like stupid easy to do this. You just set one CNAME and one A record. Anyway, there's in the guide it shows you how to do it. You buy something in Namecheap, and now it's automatically going to an actual website. So feasibly the actual cost to get 5,000 users, test an idea all the way to 5,000 paying users, Web 2 or Web 3, is ostensibly the cost of one domain name, $0 Vercel, $0 Supabase, and the cost. I would recommend the Pro cursor, but if you want it to be really cheap, perhaps you could use the free cursor and actually get 5,000 paying customers. Anyway, so let's round home base. Let's assume that we have a website on a real domain name, real URL deployed to Vercel that actually has the environment variables hooked up with it, with the SQL editor script that has now enabled you to build a full stack application. How do we test it? So this is definitely the coolest thing that Cursor has done. I followed that there's this Manus project out of China earlier this year that like really blew people's minds, where effectively the agent was controlling the browser, and everybody was all freaked out about it. Like, oh my God, the agent can control the browser. Well, as of like 3 days ago, that landed inside of Cursor, which is just absolutely nuts. I think the upshot of turning this little browser button on is that prior, when you were testing during your vibe coding, you would pull up localhost yourself and you would look at it and you'd be like, this formatting sucks, or there's a bug, or this sucks. And now, because of this browser, it can both go out and do its own testing on localhost, and it can deploy it to Vercel. And I do a little trick where I give it the login and password in a text file, so it can go log into the production server. Oh, and it can use like a Mailinator like email address to go make as many like fictitious or real, feasibly real, but it can sign up as many test users as you want, and it can do all of that, and it can manipulate all of it by just clicking this browser button here. So let's look at the testing stuff. Cool. Yeah, final verification checklists, table editor, whatever. So basically for the testing, you want it to use the browser to make a real account, to go click the get testnet funds, to go make the wallet, to go send the funds, do all of that stuff. Because it can basically be like an artificial person that goes out and like end-to-end test your application. And whenever you want to build like a new feature, right? Because I'm like, this isn't the panacea. It's not giving you like a complete working NFT marketplace or something out of the box. It's fairly simple right now. Of course, I want to keep making the template better over time. But again, say you've got the idea for like the magic like dog grooming business or something. How would you feasibly go about doing it? The workflow that I like to use, and there's also a new tool called Cursor Plan, which I don't know, I haven't played with it much. I think I'm kind of doing what Cursor Plan is doing just myself. But effectively, to build something new, I have this little docs folder that I make, and then I have it write a plan in a thing called Markdown. So it writes these really elaborate plans about how it wants to do some new thing. And I iteratively have it criticize itself, or have multiple models criticize the output until it's very, very tight and refined about exactly what to do. There's some kind of copy paste prompts in there that would help you. Like example, it doesn't know how to kill localhost for whatever reason. So if you put in your prompt always pkill, always kill localhost and then restart it again, then it can test itself better without getting stuck. Just one example. There's 1,000 of them. But if you kind of use again, this kind of copy paste template approach, build a plan, have it criticize the plan, then finally implement the plan. But then when it implements the plan, say, hey, use localhost to test and verify and make screenshots that it looks good in mobile dimensions and looks good in desktop dimensions and doesn't break anything and doesn't add any new dependencies, etc. That's kind of the basic flow. And again, if you want to do something that is just a UI change, it's pretty easy. It'll modify these, they're called TSX, these TypeScript files. That stuff is quite straightforward. Again, if you want to do a real make a real piece of new functionality, it will have to write a new SQL editor script as well, because you can't have a front end without a back end. You need more fields and more API endpoints, which again the Supabase abstracts for you, which is amazing. But yeah, so effectively to make something new, kind of conclude this, and then I can open it up for maybe 10 minutes of answering questions and stuff, and then give my voice a break for a second. Yeah, that's kind of the whole flow in a nutshell. You try to use these production grade pre-existing free tools to get something built that works correctly, and then very carefully plan, modify it, and then have it now use this browser functionality to really verify and test that it is doing the intended behavior. Of course, with all the nuances of don't leak your keys and be careful with your environment variables. But yeah, anyway, so I think that about concludes my guide. Yeah, test it, boom, you deployed. So yeah, I would love any feedback anybody has on this. I think it's cool. I think it's clever way to build brand new Dapp end to end. But yeah, I will stop sharing now, and yeah, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, well, first of all, this is awesome. Yeah, totally agree. This is, so I've been learning vibe coding, not Web3, but I've just been learning for the last few months with the free classes available to the Think community. And I think something like this would have been super helpful when I was starting out. I was talking about this a little bit yesterday too, but what you said right in the beginning is there's a million ways to go about solving any of these problems. And I think for someone starting, just having paint by numbers, A to B to C, just do these exact steps to get it working and to experience that yourself, I think is really helpful. And then something like Nick's open builds that he does 3 times a week are fantastic for just learning the whole universe of stuff out there. But yeah, I think this is just an awesome way for a new person to just get into, just do it one time and figure it out. So yeah, I really, really love that you've built it to be handhold really well for people who are just starting out.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ed. Yeah, I saw you ask some questions about Railway and stuff. So, right, exactly. There's a million different ways to Savala is another one that I think kind of is trying to put Vercel and Supabase together into one complete end-to-end thing. But yeah, at least I don't know. Yeah, everybody can use like whatever stack they want, but at least it seems to be kind of coalescing that these two players have, I think, a very generous take rate, like compared to like a 30% app store fee. Vercel and Supabase are effectively free until you get to thousands of users. So.
Have you thought about condensing the entire experience into an MCP server so that you just have to download an MCP and just run it through that? Because it looks like it could be pretty easy.
It's probably not that far away. Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. As you do this stuff, you feel like a monkey in the middle that is like every day doing slightly less stuff. So could it just go out and read the guide itself and do everything for you? I think with this browser thing in Cursor, like it's possible that it makes all the Coinbase developer program credentials and downloads the API keys. And yeah, there's still just a tiny bit of manual stuff that's still needed. But yeah, perhaps.
You could, well, once you get the MCP together, you could integrate it directly into the ThinkOS browser so people can just chat with it there and get stuff spun up pretty quickly and easily. I plan on integrating several coding and agentic infrastructure to put them in place so it'll actually build code for you and push it to GitHub and all that stuff. So this will just be another supplementation of how to get it all started from the beginning.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I think ultimately that's probably the way to, this super guide thing that I've put behind some tokens. Yeah, not to go off topic, but yeah, that X402 stuff is also quite fascinating, where you're paying tokens to like query APIs directly. But yeah, totally, I agree, Nick.
Yeah, what is your long-term vision for this? Yeah, I guess like why I think I understand why you built it. Like, get a lot more swings at the back and a lot more builders into Web3 to start being creative and doing things. I think that's what I heard from you. But I guess how do you imagine growing it over time as things get smarter? And
yeah, so some previous work that we did also with Denari was a whole GitHub syncing engine that would scrape and see what was going on in GitHub and then send people tokens for doing things, like submitting PRs and such. And we had a whole little like kind of tokenomics thing built around that. And I think now with this thing that I just showed today, that would really help kind of complete the wheel between those two concepts. So I think every big foundation blockchain top 100 project should have a Vercel, maybe it's not Vercel Supabase, but I think Vercel Supabase, their thing, default AI starter kit that somebody can clone and actually get a good results. Because they have all these amazing infrastructure, but it's so inaccessible because they haven't made it easy to use. So I guess where I'd ultimately love to go with this is that dozens or hundreds of Web3 projects have canonical default professionally engineered AI starter kit. And that if people add to it and make new stuff and make it better, then they get rewarded in tokens for doing so.
I'm not actually what's the so like Doodles would have their own AI starter kit, and that's like for their community to build off of. Or I'm not quite understanding what.
Doodle, I don't know. More like this base Coinbase thing could be the default AI starter kit for to build a base app quickly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We're talking to a few other Tezos. We're pretty deep into conversations with Hedera, a few others. But yeah, that's kind of the goal is make their stuff more accessible with this kind of like pre-done template.
All right. Any other questions for Garrett?
Well,
All right,
cool.
well,
Well,
hey,
thanks for
thanks
showing
so
up,
much for coming.
everybody.
Yeah.
And thanks, Patrick, for organizing. And then I'd love the recording as well, because I want to feed the transcript in and see if I can make the starter kit better. So.
Yeah, no, I'll get that to you for sure.
Sick. Well, awesome. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out on a Friday, everybody. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it or get some value out of it. And then the starter kit's totally open source. So if somebody wants to build the abstracted base app and play with those tools, it's more accessible than it ever has been.
Hey, Garrett, one last thing. If people have any questions or want to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Oh, good question. Well, I'll put my Telegram handle up here. And if you want to send me an old school email, you can. Boom.
Awesome. All right, cool. Yeah, so I'll send this over right after we finish up here. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, amazing. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Okay.